Hello everyone, I'm Alex Dykes, and this is the second episode of Alex on Autos Weekly. I still haven't quite figured out what to call this segment, so be sure and comment in the comment section down below, and also check out facebook.com/AlexOnAutos. I will be placing a poll over there on facebook.com with some options from the comment section on last week's video. If you're a regular viewer, then you probably know that child seat safety is near and dear to my heart. This isn't very comfortable. I have a feeling I'm over 4 and over 50 pounds. And General Motors has an interesting announcement this week for Canyon shoppers. The GMC Canyon is their new compact pickup truck in America. What's new and interesting is that you can now remove the headrests from the rear seats in the double cab, and you can insert them in front of the seat bottom cushions. This gives you a longer seat bottom cushion for a child safety seat. The reason for that is most child safety seat manufacturers say that in order to be properly installed, 80% of the bottom of the child safety seat needs to be covered by a seat bottom cushion, and most compact pickup trucks have a rear bench seat that's just too shallow in order for that to happen. So I really applaud GM for taking that extra step, and I hope that other compact pickup truck manufacturers follow suit relatively soon. Of course, that's unlikely to do much for rearward-facing child seat compatibility in the Canyon. Rearward-facing child seats in two-door coupes and two-door pickup trucks tends to be kind of tricky because there's not a whole lot of room between the rear seat back and the front seat back, meaning that you have to be a relatively small passenger or a relatively small driver in order to have a rearward-facing child seat behind you. Now, you can always email me at alex@alexonautos.com, and I'll of course reply to your email personally, but I'll also include it right here in this weekly segment as well. My first email is from Dheeraj, and I really apologize if I'm mispronouncing your first name, and his email is about crossovers. He wants to know which crossover has an adequately wide second row in order to fit 2 average or compact sized child seats along with a mother-in-law. And then he wanted to know also if I have a video review for car seats in the RAV4 XLE model. And the third question was, does the Nissan Rogue middle trim level offer enough third row seating to justify it versus a RAV4 XLE? Or should he just try and jam the mother-in-law and the car seats into the second row of the RAV4? Well, I know better than to touch the mother-in-law question, but in general, I would say that a third row SUV is awfully handy, especially if you do plan on carrying 5 people on a regular basis. So if you're a family of 4 plus you have a relative that's living with you and is going to be traveling with you on a regular basis, you now have seating for 5. And if you then have guests or you want to take someone else out with you, you're going to need a second car. But if you have the ability to have that emergency third row, as I often refer to it, it can be awfully handy. Now, SUVs in this compact category, the Rogue, something like the Sorento, any of these compact 3-row crossover vehicles, they're not going to have a whole lot of cargo room. So you can't put 7 people and 7 people's worth of cargo in the back. However, you can fit 5 people and 5 people's worth of cargo, or 5 people and in a pinch 6 or 7 people. Now, an important thing to keep in mind is that installing child seats in the third row of any of these compact SUVs is going to be tricky. It's also going to be a little bit less safe for the children because those third row seats don't have top tether anchors or latch anchors in general. So while there are a few exceptions to that worldwide, the vast majority of 3-row crossovers, there's not a whole lot of child seat accommodation going on in that third row, even though it is possible. If you're looking for 3-row SUVs, you may want to also consider the Kia Sorento. It's sized in between the Highlander, which you were concerned about it being a little bit too large for you, and something like a Nissan Rogue, which you were concerned about being a little bit too small. The Sorento and the Dodge Journey are one of those SUVs that's kind of in that little middle ground right there. They have a little bit of room behind the third row and the rear, so they're still a little bit compact back there in terms of cargo room, but they do have a slightly more comfortable third row seat than something like the Rogue or the Honda CR-V. If you really do need a 3-row crossover and you have 2 child seats hanging around, then you may want to look at something like a Nissan Pathfinder. The reasons for that are the Pathfinder is a fairly large crossover vehicle. It has a really large third row, decent amount of headroom, decent amount of legroom there in the back. It's one of the most comfortable 3-row crossovers that's available currently. But it also has another trick up its sleeve. The second row allows you to put a forward-facing child seat in the seat and move that second row forward so you can get access to the third row without removing the child seat. That's something that an awful lot of SUVs really don't do very well. The next question comes from Akaladka, and I assume that's a username, but correct me if I'm wrong. And the question is, why are diesels more efficient than gasoline engines? Well, there are a few different reasons for that, and we're going to go over things very, very basically and very quickly here. So if you want exact details about this, then I'm sure there are a wide variety of online resources for you. The first reason diesels are more efficient than gasoline engines is due to power density. Now, diesel has about 15% more power in a gallon of diesel versus a gallon of gasoline. That's a big reason why diesels are more efficient than gasoline engines. The second major reason that diesels are more efficient than gasoline engines is down to compression. Diesels run at a much higher compression than gasoline engines, and in general, of course, we're being very general here, so keep that in mind. In general, the higher the compression, the more efficient the engine. Now, there are a number of other reasons why diesels are more efficient, including not having a throttle valve, so there's less pumping loss in a diesel engine. But in general, the vast majority of the efficiency can be explained by the fact that diesel has more energy in it, as well as the fact that diesels operate on a higher compression ratio. The second part of your question was whether or not you should buy a diesel vehicle in order to save money. And that is kind of a tricky thing, because diesel vehicles typically cost more than their gasoline counterparts. Even if the two vehicles got vastly different fuel economy ratings, you'd have to factor out how long it would take you to repay that on a diesel vehicle. So something like a diesel Jetta versus a gasoline Jetta, it's going to take you quite a long time in order to make up the cost difference between the gasoline Jetta's relatively good fuel economy and the diesel Jetta's very good fuel economy but much higher price tag. Now, I know that relatively speaking, maintenance costs on a gasoline engine are a little bit higher than a diesel engine, but those are relatively minor and they don't really affect the break-even point really that much. So I'm not discounting that, just don't really bet on that saving you that much money in the long run. In general, however, my advice when it comes to comparisons is buy the car that you enjoy and the car that makes you smile. Because if you're buying a car because it seems like the practical option to you, you may end up not liking it in the long run. And the cheapest car to own is the car that you already own. So if you find yourself in a car and you find yourself not liking it after a few years because you decided on it for practical reasons, not for reasons that made you happy with the car, then you may want to dispose of that car a little bit early, and that will cost you more money in the long run than if you had just gone with the car that maybe cost you a little bit more initially. I'd also like to remind you that if you have any questions, you can email me at alex@alexandautos.com. I always reply to those emails directly. I will also include those if they're interesting in this weekly video segment. If you want to know what vehicle I'm driving this week and you want to have your input included in the video review of that vehicle, then go ahead and find me over here at facebook.com/alexandautos. I always post over there whenever I get a new vehicle. I also post comments on features and functions of the car, styling cues, etc. to get viewer and reader input on that car so I can make sure that I have a more complete video review for you every week. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Be sure and comment in that comment section down below and let me know how you feel about this revised video format. Some of you told me that you liked the news and some of you told me that you didn't like the news in the video, so I decided to just cut back on the news and include more reader emails into this video. So let me know if you like that format. Go ahead and find me on facebook.com/alexandautos, email me at alex@alexandautos.com, and I'll see you next week. A number of you asked why I have the white screen in my weekly videos. The reason is, of course, because I don't have a wholly finished house right now, so there's really no good place to video this video review other than my basement. And as you can see, my basement's not quite finished, so there's just sandstone walls right here. There's no concrete. You know, lighting in the basement, that's just the most convenient way for shooting this kind of video. Outside didn't really work while the lighting wasn't there, so that's why.